Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host, Mitch. Glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today's episode is going to be a $50 deck tech. When I say $50, I mean that is an overall deck cost. Both shipping and commanders that are $10 or less are going to be included in that cost, but basic lands will not be. Decks on this channel are built to be fun, inexpensive, and focused. If you want to learn more about what a focused commander deck is, check out this video here. On this deck tech, I'm going to take you through its strategy, the tactics, and how this deck wins. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And while you're at it, subscribe and review our podcast as well. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Today's episode comes to you courtesy of Zach. Zach has been supporting this channel for over a year now as a Golden Pig patron. I truly couldn't do this without the support of amazing patrons like Zach. For the personalized deck tech, Zach chose Firesong and Sunspeaker with a Spellslinger theme, so we're going to burn them out. Firesong and Sunspeaker is a 4/6 Minotaur Cleric that costs 4 red white. It says red instant sorcery spells you control have lifelink, and whenever a white instant or sorcery spell causes you to gain life, Firesong and Sunspeaker deals 3 damage to a creature or player. So this commander can help you in 2 ways. It can help you gain life from burn spells, and it can also help you damage with your life gain spells. Now, in my opinion, the more impactful of the two is that lifelink for our red instant sorcery spells. There are plenty of burn spells out there that can deal a ton of damage and therefore gain us a lot of life. This will help pad our life total to keep us alive so we can cast more and more spells. The more spells that we cast, the more damage that we do, and the more life that we gain. So our strategy for this deck is very straightforward. We're going to cast spell after spell to burn and gain life. Again, the more spells that we cast and the more damage that we're doing, the more life that we gain to sustain us. And then how do we win with this deck? We're going to burn our opponents down with mass and direct damage. Once we're set up, the amount of damage that this deck can output can be huge. As with all Commander's Quarters decks, I'm going to take you through 10 different tactics that show you how the deck works and how we're going to win with it. So let's start things off with tactic number 1, heating up. First up, this Wayfarer's Bauble, which we can pay 2 and tap and sacrifice to get a basic land and play tapped. Up next, we've got 3 mana rocks that each cost 2 and tap for 1. Marble Diamond comes into play tapped and it taps for a white. Star Compass also comes into play tapped. It can tap for either of our colors depending on our land situation. And then Prismatic Lens comes into play untapped. It taps for colors so it can help filter our mana. And then we're running both our Signet and our Talisman for these colors. Next up is Boros Locket, which can tap for a red or a white, and we can pay 4 Boros into it and tap and sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. And then there's Hedron Archive, which taps for colorless colors, so we can pay 2 into it and tap and sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. And finally, we've got 3 more mana rocks that cost 4 and tap for 2 with Urgolem's Eye, Sisay's Ring, and Firemind Vessel. And Firemind Vessel might come into play tap, but it can tap to add 2 mana of different colors. Now, we've got a good amount of ramp in this deck, but we're not quite done just yet. So now let's move on to tactic number 2, Light the Fire. First up, there's Mana Geyser, which says, add red to your mana pool for each tap land your opponents control. This card can lead to an extremely explosive turn. Essentially, the later the game gets, the more red we get in our mana pool from this. It can allow us to cast a ton of spells in one turn or even just one big X spell. Now this card is great in this deck, but it's not quite as good as the Golden Pig. And the Golden Pig is going to be the number 1 card out of our 99. And the Golden Pig for this deck is Smothering Tithe. Smothering Tithe is an enchantment that costs 3 and a white. It says whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color. This can put us way ahead on mana and give us a huge advantage over our opponents. It can allow us to cast spell after spell, or again just one giant big X spell if we need to. Just by having this in play for a turn or 2, we can easily get ahead of our opponents and really take over the game. And that's what makes this the Golden Pig. Now when we're casting those big burn spells though, we want to make sure that we keep our commander alive. So let's go over some ways to protect it in tactic number 3, Fireproof. First up, there's Mask of Law and Grace, which is going to give Firesong and Sunspeaker protection from black and from red. So this can not only protect it from some of our opponent's things, but also from our burn spells too. And then Magebane Armor says, prevent all non-combat damage that we dealt to equipped creature. Indestructibility takes things a step further by making Firesong and Sunspeaker indestructible. But outside of these, we've also got some enchantments that can come in handy too with Mark of Asylum and Light of Sanction. Mark of Asylum says, prevent all non-combat damage that we dealt to creatures you control, and Light of Sanction says, prevent all damage that we dealt to creatures you control by sources you control. So there is a trade-off since we won't be gaining life from hitting Firesong and Sunspeaker with our mass damage spells, but it'll definitely be worth it. These cards allow us to freely wipe the board clean and gain a ton of life. But what are actually some of those damage spells? Let's go through some now in tactic number 4, First Degree. First up, there's Fall of the Titans, which deals X damage to each of up to 2 target creatures and/or players, and it's got a surge cost for X and a red. So if we've already cast another spell this turn, it's going to be cheaper than if we cast it on its own. And then Giant Immolating Inferno is a legendary sorcery and it deals X damage each of up to 3 targets. And then Comet Storm is a flexible damage spell. It's got multi-kicker 1, choose target creature or player, then choose another target creature or player for each time Comet Storm was kicked. Comet Storm deals X damage to each of them. So the more mana that we've got, the more targets that we can choose and the more damage that we can deal. Next up, we've got some very specific damage spells coming with Sudden Demise and Bright Flame. Sudden Demise says choose a color. Sudden Demise deals X damage to each creature of the chosen color. And Bright Flame does X damage to target creature, and each other creature that shares a color with it, we gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. So essentially we're going to be gaining twice as much life from this spell. And because it's a life gain spell, we also get that free damage from our commander too. And then there's Starstorm, which is going to deal X damage to each creature, and it's got cycling for 3. So if we don't need it at the time, we can get rid of it. And finally, we've got some more X spells with Earthquake, Molten Disaster, and Magma Quake. Earthquake is going to deal X damage to each creature without flying and each player. Molten Disaster does the exact same thing, but we can give it split second for a red. And then Magma Quake deals X damage to each creature without flying and each planeswalker. Again, each of these X spells can gain us an absurd amount of life and can help us finish out games. But we've got some other set damage spells to go through as well. So let's go over them now in tactic number 5, Second Degree. First up, there's Pyroclasm, which is going to deal 2 damage to each creature. And then Breath of Dargars is going to deal 1 damage to each creature without flying and each player, but if it was kicked, it deals 4 damage instead. Next up, there's Sweltering Suns, which deals 3 damage to each creature, and it's got cycling for 3. And then Slagstorm says choose 1, it deals 3 damage to each creature, or Slagstorm deals 3 damage to each player. Next up, there's Mizzium Mortars, which can deal 4 damage to each creature that we don't control. And then Storm's Wrath deals 4 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. And then Hour of Devastation takes us a step further. It says all creatures lose indestructible until end of turn. Hour of Devastation deals 5 damage to each creature and each non-bolus planeswalker. And then there's Arcbond, which says choose target creature. Whenever that creature is dealt damage this turn, it deals that much damage to each other creature and each player. This can be a fantastic spell to pair with one of our X spells if we want to. And then Chain Reaction is going to deal X damage to each creature, where X is the number of creatures on the battlefield. Next up, there's Incite Rebellion, which says for each player, Incite Rebellion deals damage to that player and each creature that player controls equals the number of creatures they control. The more creatures that someone has, the more pain that they're going to be in. And finally, there's Solar Blaze, which says each creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. So this can kill a ton of creatures while keeping Firesong and Sunspeaker safe. We've actually got a couple of ways of kicking these spells up a notch. Let's go through those ways in tactic number 6, Third Degree. First up, there's Giant Venerated Fire Mage, which says if another red source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals that much damage plus 1 to that permanent or player instead. And then Embermaw Hellion does the exact same thing, but it's on a 4/5 body. 1 damage might not seem like a lot, but it actually really adds up with the more creatures out on the battlefield and the more things that are being hit. But some even bigger ways come from Fire Servant and Dictate of the Twin Gods. Fire Servant says if a red instant sorcery spell you control would deal damage, it deals double that damage instead. And then Dictate of the Twin Gods has Flash. It says if a source would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. So basically both these double up the effectiveness of all of our burn spells. And again, double the damage is going to be double the life gain. Now Dictate of the Twin Gods does double up everyone's damage, so keep that in mind. But still, with a burn deck like this, we're definitely going to be taking the most advantage of this. But we also kind of have another way of doubling things up too. So let's go over those ways now in tactic number 7, Kindling. First up, there's Increasing Vengeance, which says copy target instant sorcery spell you control. If this spell was cast from a graveyard, copy that spell twice. Instead, you may choose new targets for the copy. So we can essentially double up a spell for 2 mana or triple it for 5. And then Double Cast is a simpler version of this. It says when you cast your next instant sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. And then Repeated Reverberation is similar, but in an even bigger way. It says whenever you cast an instant spell, cast a sorcery spell, or activate a loyalty ability this turn, copy that spell or ability twice. You may choose new targets for the copies. So much like Increasing Vengeance, this can get really out of hand depending on what we cast. And finally, there's Volcanic Vision, which says return target instant sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. Volcanic Vision deals damage equal to that card's converted mana cost to each creature your opponents control. Exile Volcanic Vision. So this is a one-sided board wipe that's also going to help us get a spell back. But how are we actually going to get to all these great spells? Let's go over some ways in tactic number 8, Rekindling. First up, there's Survival Cache, which says you gain 2 life, then if you have more life than an opponent, draw a card, and it's got Rebound. So basically, this is going to gain us 4 life, draw us 2 cards, and deal 6 damage over 2 turns. Next up, we've got 3 spells that make us discard 1 card to draw 2 with Wild Guess, Tormenting Voice, and Thrill Possibility. And then there's Cathartic Reunion, which makes us discard 2 to draw 3. Next up, there's Heartwarming Redemption, which says discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many plus 1. You gain life equals the number of cards in your hand. And then with Corvast Fury, we choose friend or foe. Each friend discards all the cards from their hand, then draws that many cards plus 1. Corvast Fury deals damage to each foe equals the number of cards in their hand. Next up, there's Magus of the Wheel, which we can pay 1 in a red and tap and sacrifice it to make each player discard their hand, then draw 7 cards. Also, keep in mind that Smothering Tithe can work very well with Corvast Fury and Magus of the Wheel. And finally, we've got 2 ways to draw cards with life gain with Dawn of Hope and Well of Lost Dreams. Dawn of Hope says whenever you gain life, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. And then Well of Lost Dreams says whenever you gain life, you may pay X, where X is less than or equal to the amount of life you gain. If you do, draw X cards. Well of Lost Dreams can be an especially good use for all of our excess mana. Now, we've talked about doing what we want, but what about stopping our opponents from doing what they want? It's time for us to move on to tactic number 9, Burn Away. First up, there's Solemn Offering and Invoke the Divine, which are each going to destroy target artifact or enchantment, and we gain 4 life. Again, because these are gaining us life, we also get to deal out 3 damage too. And then Heliod's Intervention gives us a choice. We can choose 1, destroy X target artifacts and or enchantments, or target player gains twice X life. So with this, we can destroy a ton of artifacts or enchantments or gain a lot of life and again, deal out some damage. Now, we've nearly gone through all of our cards, but we still got a couple of valuable ones to tackle. So let's go over them in our final tactic. Tactic number 10, Heat Source. First up, there's Dingus Staff, which says whenever a creature dies, Dingus Staff deals 2 damage to that creature's controller. With the amount of times that we're going to be wiping the board, our opponents are going to take a ton of damage from this. Next up, there's Cradle Vitality, which says whenever you gain life, you may pay 1 and a white. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature for each 1 life you gained. This can easily turn our commander to a one-shot kill with just one of our spells. And finally, there's Sunforger, which is an extremely valuable card in this deck. By paying red and a white and untouching Sunforger, we search our library for a red or white instant card with converting mana cost of 4 or less and cast that card without paying its mana cost, then we shuffle our library. This card is a toolbox in itself and it gives us access to a ton of cards in this deck. A big thanks to Zach again for supporting this channel for over a year now and for picking Firesong and Sunspeaker. I had a ton of fun building around it. If you want to support this channel or want your own deck tech dedicated to you, consider becoming a patron. But now that we've gone through the spells in this deck, let's go on to the mana base. First up, there's Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, both of which we can tap and sacrifice to get a base land and play tapped. Next up, we've got 6 lands that come into play tapped and tap for either a red or white mana. And then we're going to be running one of the Vivid lands with Vivid Crag. Finally, we're running 28 basic lands, 21 of those are going to be a mountain, and 7 will be a plains. And now that we've gone through every single card in this deck, let's do a quick price check. A quick reminder that our deck costs are calculated using TCG Player Optimization, optimizing with even heavily played and damaged cards because those cards need a home too. The average Firesong and Sunspeaker EDH Rec deck will set you back $158.41. Our deck is going to be much more affordable, coming in at $49.79. Again, the price of this deck is the price that I got for it on the day that I'm recording. If you want to see a breakdown of this deck's cost, check out the link in the description. Keep in mind that prices can and will fluctuate and change over time. But with these deck costs, I want to be as transparent as I possibly can. Again, Commander's Quarters decks are about to be tuned and focused within their budget, but there are always ways that we can improve on them. So let's go through some reasonable upgrades now to see what some of those ways just might be. First up, let's add in Price of Progress by taking out Pyroclasm. Next up, let's add in Star of Extinction by taking out Breath of Dargaz. And then let's add in Blasphemous Act by taking out Sudden Demise. Next up, let's add in Pyromancer's Goggles by taking out Boros Locket. And then let's add in Darksteel Plate by taking out Mask of Law and Grace. Finally, let's add in Aetherflux Reservoir by taking out Fall of the Titans. And now it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what you think about this deck and what you think about the commander in general. And make sure you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons who help make this show possible. I truly couldn't do any of this without your support. If you want to support this channel directly, consider becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There are even tiers where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. You can check out all the Patreon tiers and rewards at patreon.com/commandersquarters. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.